I used to spiral really quickly. If something would happen, it would be like the worst. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through this. And learning to just breathe and say, okay, it's going to come my way. I'm going to confront it. These are the three steps that I'm going to take that will ground me again. And the sun will come up tomorrow.
Hey there, Vibers. Welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast, where we keep it real, we keep it relatable, and we keep it a little bit funny as we dive into all things mental health, ADHD, and introversion. My name is Kai. I'm your host, and each week we're going to tackle life struggles with honesty, humor, and a whole lot of heart. So whether you're here for practical advice or a little validation or just a laugh about what life is like as an adult in today's world, listen, you are in the right place. We are not about toxic positivity here. We are all about being genuine to each other and to ourselves. And we're talking about real things. And we want to encourage each other and remind you that you are not alone. With that said, my friends, sit back, relax, and let's vibe through this together and enjoy today's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast.
Hello, everybody. What's up? It's your boy, Kai. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. In today's episode, we're diving into a conversation about strength, survival, and starting over. My guest is the incredible Julie Barth, author, mother of six, trauma survivor, and the founder of the Colin James Barth Outreach, a nonprofit that's helping women-led households in crisis. Julie's life has been filled with love, loss, and resilience, and she is here to share what she has learned. We'll talk all about healing from trauma, recognizing emotional abuse, and rebuilding life after hardship. So if you've ever felt stuck, this episode is for you. With that said, I want to welcome our guest, Julie Barth. Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Okay, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. As soon as I read your story, I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to have her on and ask questions, because I know that there's a lot of people in my audience that can relate to your story, which I want to get into. I want to talk about your personal journey here. Your story is deeply personal and powerful. If you don't mind, just kind of update everybody on like a brief overview of your story and what you're trying to get across to people while you're spreading your message. That way, from there we'll get into like the specific questions that I have for you.
Sure. Again, you already mentioned I'm the mother of six, and I wrote a book. I have another one coming out, and I started a charity in my former husband's name. He passed away at the age of 37 from pancreatic cancer. And at the time, we had four small children. He went in and they told him he had 2 weeks to live. And um, go home, let him say goodbye. And it didn't happen that way. He actually survived 16 months. So, there's blessing and a curse in both of that. At the time, we had four, like I said, and they were ages 10 to, I think, Piper was about 6 months. So over that time, I would go to chemo with him, and he was my best friend. We went to grammar school together. He's my first kiss, and we had a lot of hope that he was going to make it. And I had all these visions of, oh, we'll go downtown and we'll reconnect and have some time alone. But as many things in life, it didn't happen that way. And he was just so sick that I had a BlackBerry, and I started writing my daughter Tatum's story while we were together and piecing it back and emailing it. So I wouldn't bother him. But we had a daughter at the time she at that time was, I think, 3 or 4. And we had just been through this entire situation with her. She has primordial dwarfism, so she's a little person. And just through a series of mishaps, she had a trach at birth. We couldn't diagnose her because there was no such thing as Google. So it's not like you could just, Google it. So there was, 4 years of trying to figure out, maybe underlying what's wrong, what's causing all of this, because it was from birth, literally, that she stopped growing. But on a global scale, more like, how do we save her in the here and now? What do we do to help her? She had lost her voice because we had to have 43 different surgeries. So I was unpacking all of that and writing her story. And in the interim, it just kind of all flowed into real time with him. So, it sat on my laptop for about 12 years. And in the after I lost him, I kind of just wanted to pack it up and put it in a little
Yeah.
takeaway thing. And I decided that I was just going to move on with life. I had 4 kids who needed me to just keep roll bouncing with it. And I got into a second relationship. And 10 years later, it was a really bad relationship for me, a lot of emotional abuse. Um, so where I am now is I finally had the courage to go back and read the book, which I didn't want to, but I'd made a promise to Colin that I would keep his legacy alive, and I'm finally doing that. So originally, I had visions of, supporting women who were going through crisis like illness and had children. And, that's still one of my goals. But due to the second incident that I was in, I've kind of right now I'm focusing on helping women who are the survivors of emotional, financial, and economic abuse, going through divorces and suddenly find themselves as head of household. And in these situations, a lot of times, you lose everything. You're forced to defend your children when you don't have the resources to. And so our organization, it, it, it- it's still evolving. It's really well received. Everybody's starting to get it. The average man's life situation goes down about 10% economically, and the average woman's goes down to about 45%. Um, so, the goal is to take that one part, at least for now, like I said, to take that one part off of a woman's shoulders, to know her children are being protected. She can fight for what's hers, isn't being forced to settle, isn't worried about their last dime because they're fighting, all of this other noise while still trying to keep their house intact. So that's kind of a real quick synopsis of where
Yeah.
we're at.
Yeah, that's
Like
a
it's a
beautiful
big
it's a
initiative, but
yeah, and I first and foremost, I can't thank you enough for having the strength to tell this story, because I know that there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to this being like, oh yeah, I know that I know that feeling, and I know what she's going through. I'm going through it myself, or I've been through it, and I know there's people out there that are going to want to hear this story. So I'm really happy that we're able to have this conversation. And I want to go back a little bit to when you were writing notes from a BlackBerry. Can you think of a specific moment um, when you were writing it initially that made you say, I really need to tell this story?
I'll be honest with you. When I wrote it, right now I'm a writer by trade. At the time, I didn't really. My job was being a mom. So in writing it, people ask me, was it cathartic? Well, potentially. But I think truly what drove me to write it was that I didn't want to forget all that Tatum had been through. I
Yeah.
mean, if you read the book, there are situations I've probably lost her 5 times in front of me. And even when I read it, I was like, oh, I forgot that. I forgot that. And the same is true of Colin. We had these 4 children and they were so young and they never got to know him. And he fought so valiantly and he did not want to go. And I always wanted them to know that he fought impossible odds. He did everything to stay here. And I wanted them to know him through the stories that you don't always tell your kids.
Right.
You have them in your head and you always think there's time for that later. And I had the time. So I don't know that I wrote it to put it out into the universe as much as I just wrote it, as to remember it. But there was a point toward Colin's illness later on when he had lost all of his faculties and we had to give up on the dream that he was going to get better. And I did say to him, your courage is going to mean something. Like the world will have to, I will honor the fact that you fought so hard for your family. And, Tatum, she shouldn't still be here, but she's 24. She's a self-taught artist and she just wants to be a part of the world, but really can't. She, is limited. spoiler alert, ended up getting cancer when she turned 13. So, which was completely related to everything else. So she had her
Yeah.
right side removed, and she's just such a shining light. And it's like she has no voice, but she has like such a presence and just wants to be a part of everything. And I just decided it was time to honor what I said to Colin and to let Tatum see what a difference she makes in the world. Because, you know, she sits at home and her window is through social media, and she just wants to make people, you know, her art is just so amazing, and she just loves being connected to people. So
Yeah.
I thought, now's the time. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, listening to your story, you've been through so many different roles, caregiver, mother, widow, survivor. How did becoming a caregiver at such a young age shape your perspective on love and sacrifice and self-preservation?
Um, well, and you know, it's been 20 years. So now's
Yeah.
almost 20. So now is the perfect time to ask me, because if you had asked me, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know, at the time, um, I think that I never felt sorry for myself. I think it was harder being on the outside as a caregiver, not being able to save the person that you love the most. And that's a really hard thing internally to fight with, because you feel like they have so much faith that you can save them that you start believing it. And then when you start believing it, then you start feeling bad that you can't. So at such a young age, it was like I didn't have time to fall apart. I didn't have time to really even sit with it. I was looking, you know, trying to raise four other kids who were running around and needed a life. And I had this special needs daughter, and, you know, everyone, it's a weird dynamic because people start pulling away necessarily, and then you feel them pulling away. So you push away. And all of a sudden you find that like you haven't talked to people in, you know, months, years. And
Yeah.
then where do you pick up? So it's a very isolating feeling. You feel bad at all the time. You feel guilt, you know, once they're gone, you feel bad that you wish they were gone because you remember the people that they were. So I think all of that baggage weighed me down heavily for a lot of years.
Right. Right.
I think it was a positive too, because I didn't at the time to take things very seriously. You know, like when your kids would get a C in school, I was like, okay, you know. Um,
I
so
wish it was
I
like that
had,
for me. I was like, oh man.
I know, my kids are like, yay. But you know, there wasn't time for me to sweat the small things,
Makes
and
sense. Yeah.
there might have been a perspective of others that I was, you know, detached, or I just didn't care. Or I was, you know, living in la la land, but, or that I didn't acknowledge. I think the thing is that if I stopped to feel the gravity of everything around me, I would have been paralyzed.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I did a really good job of, I always have a hard time saying that word, but I putting things in packages and saying like, I'll deal with that later.
Sure.
But I think that that might have led to my second relationship and all that came with that. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so those things that serve
Yeah.
us best, I think, serve us for a great amount of time. But then when they don't serve us so greatly, you can't let go of them. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there's
That
there's
makes
a
sense.
positive and negative to everything.
Right. I know a lot of people feel isolated in their trauma. But you've chosen to share your journey openly with the world. At any point, did you ever hesitate to tell your stories so publicly? And what gave you the courage to move forward?
Well, you know, there's two different situations that I'm coming out with.
Yeah.
The first one, and it's easier with the first situation because like I didn't do anything, or I could not change pancreatic cancer. I can't solve it. I can't cure it. I didn't ask for it. You know, I made no steps for that to come on. Same with the genetic thing. Like I
Yeah.
did the best to fix that situation. The second situation is, that one is harder. The first one, I want to shine a light on the courage and the resilience and everything. You know, the second one, it is hard. It's shameful, to anyone who's been in it. There's a degree of, people won't believe me. There's a degree of having to look really hard at yourself in the mirror and recognize that you were a party to some of it, that it didn't happen in a bubble, that you made conscious decisions, you did stupid things. You became someone that you didn't recognize. And yeah, opening up that can of worms, that I still every day I think, why did you do that? Like, why do you
Sure.
continue
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yesterday was kind of a weird, I believe in the universe. And again, I think that I believe that everything happens for a reason. And
Sure.
when the universe is telling you, or you feel it in your heart that you're supposed to do something, I've stopped ignoring that. I've stopped thinking, I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in coincidence. And again, if I can save one person from feeling the misery of the past 10 plus years, then just one person, then my struggle, Tatum's struggle, Colin's struggle, then it means something. And there's nothing worse than going through something and not understanding the meaning behind it, especially when it's not what you want, because you're like, why do I have to do that? Um, it's kind of like, I always thought when I was pregnant, you have morning sickness and you're like, oh, well, a good thing's going to come from it. So the pain
Sure.
is not as ugly. Well, when you're terminal and you get sick, you have to find the goodness in it or it's purposeless. And I refuse to believe that things are purposeless.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you lost your first husband to cancer. You navigated the medical world with your daughter's rare genetic condition. For you personally, like hearing these stories, like hearing you talk, for the last couple of minutes about everything that you've gone through and how you've been helping other people. For you personally, how have you kept yourself from going to that dark place in moments? Because I know that there's a lot of people listening that me myself included, that are applauding your strength, because like all of these stories are not easy traumas to navigate. How did you keep yourself from going to those dark places?
I'll be honest, it was my kids. It
Yeah.
has always been my children. It has always, I haven't always done the best as a mom. There are a lot of things that I regret, but, you know, they have grounded me. They have reminded me of, what's important in life. They've given me a reason to fight. They've given me a reason to wake up every morning. It really does all come back to them, and my duty to them is to make a better world for them. Being the mother of four girls, my duty is to make sure that they protect themselves and
Right.
that they are protected. Um, so I I have never been a person that can really just wallow in something. Sure, I can ruminate with the best of them.
Right.
But
Right.
I find that wallowing in something, it doesn't help it anymore. Um, I just think that you have to see it for what it is and find a good, I'm also somebody that will say something very off color and laugh at a time that's not funny. And I know
Yeah.
that the older I get and the more situations I get through, it probably comes across like I'm a little more callous, maybe. I'm not. I just recognize that nothing lasts forever, like good or
Mhm.
bad,
Yeah.
but mostly good. Like if you love your situation, hold on to it. If you don't love your situation, hold on because you know it will be back to where you love. So it's all a matter of just understanding that it's a cycle in life and
Right.
you have ups and downs and you just got to coast through the downs till you get to another up.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that mindset and that outlook, and I think that anybody, no matter where you are in life, can benefit from having that sort of mindset, moving your life forward. As I was doing my research on you and your story, one thing that I noticed, you talk a lot about resilience, um, especially resilience being more than just quote bouncing back from something, right? In your opinion, what does resilience really look like when life keeps throwing you these unexpected challenges in your, like, what does resilience really look like?
Gosh, that's a hard question. I think that resilience is being able to still find joy.
Sure.
Um, I think especially at this time in our history right now, I personally have made a conscious decision, whether that's good or bad. I'm sure there's I don't watch the news. I try not to get not so, too wrapped up in the rhetoric that's going on around me. I
I'm the same
try
way.
to,
Hmm.
yeah, like
Hmm.
block out the negative. There are so
Yeah.
many things to focus on that when I'm encountered with a negative situation, my natural tendency, and I've been blessed in this. And again, some people I think have this impression of me that I'm in denial, I'm not paying attention, I'm not grieving like I should. There's a negative way to see what I'm doing. Um, I think my children too can see that I just kind of like dance my way through life. And it's not because I can't see all that's wrong, but because I choose not to. Because even if I acknowledge it, if I can't do anything about it, then why focus on it? And even in the worst situations, and that's what I'm saying, looking back on this thing with Colin, I only had from sixth grade, we were married almost 10 years, or maybe just past 10 years. And I could choose to look at it like I lost my best friend. But here's the thing is like, I consider myself the most blessed person in the world to have met him, to have had him. He was in our lives long enough to make Tatum who she is, to support me in that journey. And I don't know what you believe on past this, but I don't think it's the last time I'll see him. I think that the people that you meet here on earth are connected to you, and there's a reason why. And unless you try and find meaning in it, then you can't really find joy in this world,
Yes.
because you will always gravitate toward the negative and the ugly and the fear. I lived a lot of years in fear, and I think
Yeah.
fear is one of the most toxic emotions that we can have as
Yes.
humans.
I agree, and I'm really happy that you were talking about focusing on the things that you can control, because like so this cup right here, this it says "Wait for it," and that's the name of the song from the musical Hamilton, which is one of my favorite musicals. And the reason that that song stands out to me is because of one lyric, and there's one lyric in the song that Aaron Burr says, "I am the one thing in life I can control." And so like listening to you tell that story as I'm sitting here drinking out of this specific cup right now, I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, we're I definitely understand, because you're right. Like I've taken this this route in life where I try to legitimately focus on the things that I can control, because there's so much out of our control. And the moment that I realized that I can focus just on the things I can control, life got better for me in a way. Like I felt like I was not worrying about the things that like I can't change, but I can change me. I can change my story. I can change my journey, and hopefully positively affect the people around me, so that they feel enough courage to do the same. So I'm thank you for sharing that, because that's that you and I, we're like twinsies there. We're like twinsies there with that. Um, I want to talk about your second marriage here, because it introduced a different. You've been alluding to this already, but it introduced a different type of hardship, the financial abuse, the emotional abuse that you were going through. As you look back, do you what's like subtle signs of those things, emotional and financial abuse, do you think that you overlook that other people might want to keep an eye out for?
Sure. I was not, it wasn't as much financial as it was emotional.
Sure.
I, you know, it was the hardest thing that I think I've ever been through. And I think the hardest part was that I knew the entire time, like everything that happened, I was like, that's not right. It's like
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
I can honestly say from day two. Obviously it gets worse over time, and nobody comes to you and they say, they don't say, I'm going to be really mean to you. I'm going to call you names. I'm going to,
Right.
hurt your children. But there's, everybody has that sense about them where your brain is saying, wait, just wait for it. that cup. But that's a different kind of wait for it. There's something, just take a breath, look around, and decide for yourself if this is right or wrong. But I think too many times we're in situations where we decide like, this can't be real, like things like this don't happen. And I was going to ask you, when you
Yeah.
said that you're in control of things, like you're running this podcast, and I don't know how it is for you, but some days I wake up and I'm like, I'm going to change the world. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to. And then there's that part of your brain that says, Julie, like, you're not
Yeah.
going to change the world. Who are you? You're one person. Get over yourself.
Right.
But I think it's that inner voice that you can either choose. We always tend to listen to our negative inner voice, don't we? Like
Correct.
someone says, like, when my body says, like, well, you're being a jerk, I will listen to that. But when you get on when you get on, I hear somebody say, like, she's a survivor, she's resilient. I'm always like, I don't
Yeah.
know
You're
who
like,
he's talking about. Yeah,
yes.
like, not me. But if you
Yeah.
said, like, yeah, she was, in a really bad mood yesterday and treated someone, I would be like, yeah, I did. And
Right.
it's
Right.
just that it's learning to listen to the part of your personality that's trying to protect you rather than the one that's trying to put you in your place, I guess.
Right.
Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
everybody sees you. I've talked to so many people about my situation because of my charity. And I just sat with a woman today because that's what I try and do, is just sit down and have a conversation, because nobody wants to admit they're in these relationships. And the first thing that she said was, I did this, I did this. And and to be fair, she kept saying, and to be fair. And I'm listening to her, and I I, I just, my heart broke, because I was like, you are taking so much responsibility for what's going on when you know that it's not all you, or you wouldn't be sitting here with me right now. So I think when you're a caregiver and when you love someone and when you're trying to keep it together, you just kind of keep letting those boundaries go and stepping across them, and you become numb to it. And then you get to a point where if you admit what was going on and you admit all of these things, then you're complacent. You have to say, I was stupid. You're going to have to say, like, I let this happen. I let, A, B, and C. I handed the keys to the kingdom. And then
Right.
you worry that everyone's going to judge you. Um,
Mhm.
so, I'm not saying that I can't give people red flags. I can sit here and give you a list, but I would dare say that 80% of the people, if not more, of the people that are in these relationships, they already know these flags. The thing is to act on the flags, listen to the flags,
Right.
and allow them to sit with them, and don't keep dismissing them and saying, oh, it's me. It's got to be me. Because
Right.
I would say 9 times out of 10, it is not you.
Right. I feel being a content creator, um, I've people often reach out with their stories. And I've heard so many incredible stories about survival. And um one of the things that's a common thread among a lot of people, and I'm sure you might get this from your end with your organization, but I feel as though many women feel ashamed or hesitant to leave unhealthy relationships, for a variety of reasons. Um, how can we change the conversation around that? Like, what can we do to help people feel more comfortable and less ashamed or hesitant to leave a relationship that they know is unhealthy?
Ugh. I mean, that's kind of, where our organization is at. There's just, it's such a complex, you know, unfortunately, you cannot get somebody to leave until they're ready to leave. And what I find is most women, that's kind of like what we're programmed to do, is to keep families together, to play nice, to keep everyone. And, when you admit to somebody that you're a failure, that you let something happen, um, I don't know how you undo that shame, because I'm not sure if that's a societal thing. I feel like that's more of an internal thing. Um, I think we can all talk to our daughters, and that's I don't. I'm sure you know Gabby Petito. Do you know? So I've spoken with her foundation, and
Yeah.
we're trying to coordinate things. But that's one of the biggest hurdles is, teaching girls that it's okay to fail. It's
Yeah.
okay for you to call it quits. It's okay for you to say, I am going to stick up for me. Because as women, you're taught to make nice, play nice, um, take the responsibility, keep everyone in line, be controlled, um, don't yell, don't cause conflict. Um, and especially in emotional abuse, the hardest part about it is that first of all, there are no signs. Physical abuse, I can't even imagine. But when you're emotionally abused, it's not like you can look in the mirror and say, "Oh, I've got bruises."
Right.
And in an emotional abusive situation, you do things that you would never ever imagine you would. I when I look back at the chasing, the crying, I would push away and then I would beg back. It just, I can't even tell you the things, the lengths that I would go to try and keep that relationship together. So by the time it's time to leave, you're so afraid that people are going to see you. They're going to see that you sent crazy text messages. They're going to see that you yelled. And unfortunately, when you're in a relationship with someone like that, they want you to react that way because then they say, see, she's crazy. And so you play right into it. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, I am crazy. And so how do you
Yeah.
want that the world to see that? It's embarrassing to air your dirty laundry because if you expose them, you have to expose yourself. And nobody wants to do that. I still wake up in a hot sweat thinking, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Sure.
I did some pretty crazy stuff. And I was a person that I didn't want to be in that relationship. And that's, I guess if we can just all stop judging one another, that's like the global thing, isn't it?
Hmm.
You just never know what someone's dealing with in their internal voice. You don't know what they're dealing with behind closed doors. And you don't know the baggage that they come to a situation with and all the demons that they're fighting. But I think it's so easy to say, what parent hasn't said, oh, my kid would never. They're the next day their kids, hitting someone at school. So, but we all want to
Mhm.
think that we would never do something stupid.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know if I
And for
answered
those
your question.
no, you did. No, absolutely, absolutely. And for those that are wondering, again, the nonprofit's called the Colin James Barth Outreach, and it's dedicated to helping women-led households in crisis. And one of the things that you have mentioned before is that you want women to protect themselves without stigma or feelings of selfishness. You were kind of just talking about that just now, which I find amazing. And like, I'm really curious, since starting this nonprofit and hearing so many people's stories, what has that been like just for you as a person to continue to hear these stories? Like, how does that make you feel?
Horrible. It's like
Sure.
only because I wish that I could help, I hear their stories and it's almost like you get two classes. They're in one or two places. Either they're trying to keep their whole families together and they're dealing with somebody who doesn't want resolution when they do. And
Right.
I would love to just step in and, that's the fixer in me. Like, let's fix the situation. But
Hmm.
there's so many, it takes time and it takes so much. And so when I get messages from people, sure, I mean, there's that part of me that is like, okay, it wasn't just me. There are a lot of people out there, and it makes me feel good that hopefully I can make a change in this one area of our world, our society. But on an individual basis, I just feel the sheer hell that they're going through. And there's not a thing I can do to take them out of it besides help to support them until they get to the other side. And the only thing that I really can lend is that feeling of I've all had it. I'm going to lose it all. I'm going to lose it all. I mean, we have all woken up in the middle of the night, whether it's because of our bills, our relationship, and you just feel like I'm going to lose it. And when you get beyond it, you will. There's no way around losing it at all. But what you realize on the other side of it is that you didn't need or want the things that you thought you were so scared of losing. They were actually probably the things that were keeping you stuck. And it's so hard to see when you're in it. And on the outside of it, it's so clear. It's just a really weird dynamic. And I think the more that I have these talks with people, the most everyone has said, oh, that happened to my sister. Oh, that happened to my aunt. My cousin's going through this right now. So it is not an isolated incident. You are not alone. You are not broken. It is not all your fault. We all play our roles. It takes two, 100%. It is never all one person's fault. But at the same time, you can't continue to beat yourself up for the things that you've done when you know that your heart was in a good place. You just made some really poor choices, not out of malice, just because you loved too much. You were in a situation and it doesn't make you weak.
Right, right. You have a
These
new
women are
book.
anything but weak.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, the stories that I'm sure you hear, and I mean, and the stories that I hear as well. Like, it's such an inspiring thing, like, and
Yeah.
it like to see the strength that all of these women have to push forward, not only for themselves, but oftentimes for their children as well. You know, to keep their family together, to make sure that they are providing for their children and giving them the best life possible. Like I'm on record by saying that I think these people are superheroes, like actual true superheroes, you know, and it's a beautiful thing to see that, you know, you talk about resilience a lot. Like it's really beautiful to see that. You have an upcoming book, you have a new book coming out
I do.
from thorns to blossoms is what it's called, suggesting like a transformation of sorts. Can you talk a little bit about what that book is about? Maybe give us like some insight on what inspired it and what people can get out of it in your story.
Sure. So there's actually three books. It's Notes from a BlackBerry. The second one that will be coming out soon is From Blackberries to Thorns. And that's about, the situation and getting out of it. And the third one that I'm working on is From Thorns to Blossoms. And Thorns to Blossoms is more about, unpacking it all, recognizing how you get to where you're at, and also like seeing the good in where you get to, because it's so, you get stuck and you think, I'm never going to get out of this. Like, it's so easy to just fall into it. And, I used to spiral really quickly. If something would happen, it would be like the worst, like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through this. And learning to just like breathe and say, like, okay, it's going to come my way. I'm going to confront it. These are the three steps that I'm going to take that will ground me again. And the sun will come up tomorrow. Is such it seems like such a simple thing. But when you're in these situations where you go through trauma, it's almost like that cortisol and everything else just keeps you in a state of like fire
Yeah,
drill all the time. And it's hard to, my literal worst day today is 100% better than my best day when I was stuck in non-action. It was like I kept trying to fix, something that it's like a sweater that, is unraveling and you're trying to pull at it and you're just making it worse. And you're like, I don't even
yeah,
know, where's the end? But there is an end. And there's no way to get through it without some really hard times. But just know that when you get on the other side of it, you will wonder why it took you so long to do it. And you could waste, decades of your life being stuck in fear of what's next, or you can take the steps to get to what's next and then recognize that you made it through.
mhm, right. Um, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. here. You might have been asked this before, but I'm really curious what your answer is. You get a chance to go back and talk to young Julie, maybe when you were first starting to go through uh, everything in your first relationship. If looking back on everything that you've been through since then, what would you say to young Julie now?
I think the one thing that I see in myself and a lot of women around me is it doesn't matter what people think about you, because I've made so many decisions worried what will people think, or how do I look from the outside, or am I doing what people are expecting me to do? And that stops you from being your genuine self. If I could go back, I would say it doesn't matter if other people like you, as long as you are good with you and you know you're making the right decisions, that's all that matters. You're the only person you have to answer to ever. But it's so, that is such an easy thing. But when you're empathetic and you're a pleaser and you care about other people, not being liked is like torture. And then all of a sudden you realize that no matter how hard you try, someone isn't going to like you. And truly the only person that you need to worry about is yourself, and you're doing the right thing, and that you're caring for the people in the best way that you know how, and that people can rely on you. So yeah, that would be my thing, is stop worrying about what everyone thinks, how everyone feels about you. And the people that don't like you, or usually it's because they don't know you. They dislike
Yes.
a version of you that they think you are. Because I think if I knew half the people the way I think I know people, it would probably be a completely different version, because we all hide those parts of ourselves that we think won't be accepted. But those are usually the tender and vulnerable, and the ones that we're ashamed of are the ones that truly make us human.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't thank you enough for this. And I'm as I'm continuing to listen to you speak, I keep thinking of my listeners. I keep thinking of my social platform audience, and I can see all of them relating to your story and getting something really good and validating out of this. And so I can't, I honestly, I can't thank you enough, because I know, I just know, I get, sometimes I do these interviews a lot, and I'm like, I can always tell when I know my audience is going to get something really, really useful out of it. So like, honestly, thank you for sharing your story and your insight. I have one more question for you. And if you don't mind speaking directly to my audience here, for anyone that's feeling trapped, whether it's in grief, an abusive relationship, financial instability, whatever it may be, what message of encouragement would you give to them right now?
I think that you when you're stuck in something, you can't see it for what it is. Like I said, from the outside, it looks so clear. Unfortunately, it takes getting beyond whatever you're in to see the beauty in it. But I think that understanding that, and knowing that you are supposed to be where you're at that moment, whether you want to be or not, it will make sense to you. And you look back at it, and it will all make sense of why you had to go through this. Again, being stuck in something really is because you're familiar with the devil, but what you don't understand is it's still the devil.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
yeah, so familiarity does not protect you, it doesn't keep you safe, and it doesn't squash your fears. It just keeps you in a predictably horrible situation.
Right. Again, I can't thank you enough. Really, thank you so much for sharing your story. For anybody that's listening, if you want more information about Julie's books or her nonprofit, the Colin James Barth Outreach, I will include all of that information and links in the description of this podcast. So all you have to do is click, and it'll give all of the information there. Julie, thank you again. I'm just gonna keep thanking you.
Thank you. Well, I
uh,
appreciate you having me
yeah,
on so much. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
the women, you told me like who your audience is, and
Mhm.
the best thing, like, women are so amazing, and I don't think we truly value how much we have to provide to the world, we diminish ourselves. And, you know, there's a whole life out there that you should grab 100% of and enjoy, because
Yeah,
you only get
I
one, from what I've said.
I couldn't
Heard, I
agree.
mean.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Julie, thank you again for your insight.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found a little bit of comfort in today's episode, and I hope that you're walking away with a little bit of encouragement, and I hope that you laughed a little bit along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. Let me know what you thought of the episode. I really want to hear your voice. I want to hear your story. I want to hear all about your journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure you follow me on all of your favorite social media platforms. Follow me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, at The Vibe with Kai for more tips, more laughs, and more real talk. Remember, my friends, you are not alone on this journey. We are in this together. And until next time, stay kind to yourself, embrace the journey, and keep vibing. I'll catch you next time. Much love. Good vibes.